there are societies where addiction was practically unknown, and there are societies where addiction wreaks particular havoc, and it seems like the United States would be a very good example of that. And why that happens in some countries and quite dramatically differently from most European countries. So, for example, I mean, just the diagnosis of alcohol dependence is wildly bigger in America than it is, say, in the Netherlands. And that isn't down to just diagnosis practices. It's clearly alcohol dependence is a much bigger thing, a much bigger phenomenon in American society than it is in Dutch. And it's not fixed. I mean, you know, we know, for example, that French drinking has changed vastly since the 50s to now. So all of these kind of cultural factors drive particular kinds of addiction. I mean, the person that really noticed that to start off with was Jelinek, who defined these different types of alcoholism based on his studies of different cultures and different societies and the way they express their alcohol problems differently, and the way people, you know, accept or don't accept drink. I mean, a lot of countries where there is a very serious addiction problem have very ambivalent views on alcohol use. The idea that, you know, for example, somebody would drink some alcohol every day of their lives, of their adult lives, and that's perfectly normal and acceptable. Very few Americans would agree with that. They'd say, you know, if someone drinks alcohol every day, there's sort of something wrong. And you know, I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. The history of attitudes to alcohol in America, very interesting story. Certainly, the early pilgrims and the immigrants that came at that time rather celebrated alcohol and thought it was rather a good thing, and you know, God's good bounty and stuff. So, where this kind of fear of alcohol came from, it's something to do with religion and culture. I mean, it's interesting that New Zealand, which again, the white community in New Zealand comes from Protestant, Scott.
Yep.
You know, that's obviously a huge generalisation, but that's very, very strong. You know, your sheep farmer in Invercargill is probably Scots, probably called MacDonald or something, and they're Protestant Christians. And on the New Zealand general election ballot, when they're electing a government, until very recently, I think it's just been removed, but do you vote that New Zealand goes alcohol free, you know, prohibition? So there's something to do with Protestantism and prohibition that's kind of interesting. I'm not, you know, enough of a historian to know how valid those arguments are, but that kind of thing really interests me.